And Alex, we're looking beyond EVs. We're also seeing buses. So we talked about Basigo, and then there's Rome, but this is now happening in many parts of Africa that BYD and other Chinese bus technology companies are starting to have an impact. So maybe cars will not be the thing that takes off in Africa, but other modes of transportation. What are you seeing?
The thing about EVs in Africa is just predictability, and that's where it will start from, right? So take an example, a bus. Nairobi in its form, it's about 50 kilometers end to end, however side you look at. So the reason why buses are taking a lot of the cake is just because there is predictability. So you're picking people from point A, dropping them at point B, and then charging it at probably point B, and then going back to point A. So that predictability is really simple to develop charging infrastructure, to develop support for that ecosystem. It's just simpler as opposed to, your common four-wheelers, which take an Uber for an example. You pick someone at, say, Nairobi, they want to go 25 kilometers the other side. And then if you take them that side and someone picks a trip to 25 kilometers further, it's really tricky for even people who are doing charging infrastructure to sort of map out this because of that unpredictability. And then buses make more sense now because, one, you're carrying a lot of people. Buses are also quite expensive in general. And the way the bus infrastructure has been set up in Kenya is you cannot import a second-hand bus. So everyone who wants to buy a bus today has to buy it brand new. So that in its sense just allows more people to now start looking into EVs in terms of capex. So the capital expenditure to just purchase the bus and the operating expenditure to actually operate the bus against a diesel comparative bus. So most people are starting to warm up to buses, and then that will not trickle down into four-wheelers. So like you said, buses will take majority of the cake. And then as people interact more with electric buses, things will be simpler, spiraling it down. Because if you look at Kenya, we have a culture called Matatu culture. So these are heavily graffitied buses, heavy music, and things like that. But there is a segment of Kenyans who just want to drive really quietly to work. And then if now you start including things to do with tech, So the reason why most EV buses are now starting to become better and most people are preferring them is because of that predictability of these buses. So you can easily log into an app and then when the bus will come, as opposed to going, in Kenya they're called stages, so it's where you stop and wait for a bus to come. But now you can now start booking a seat, you can even pay monthly, and then once you introduce the tech side of things become slightly better, and that's why the bus would grow.
So in Jenga, Alex talked about the Matatus, these minivans, if for people who are not familiar with them, and those guys just drive fast and crazy. They're like Formula One drivers. I mean, they're just, because they got to move. The more people they carry, the more money they make. So they're hustling. Now, exactly. In Nairobi, they're still using traditional gas engines, and a lot of those are Toyotas, right? I mean, I think the Toyotas are the most popular ones.
Yes, the
But we're starting to see in Jenga in South Africa that they're using new generation of Matatus. I don't know what they call them in South Africa, but that is a potential change, that we could see across the continent in many different ways, using e-mobility for the Matatus, these minivans.
So the latest that has come from South Africa in terms of public transportation is eCamva. And it is a very new kind of service. And interestingly, just like Kenya, they have vans which mass move people. I remember when I was there last, they had similar Matatus. Actually, the vans are just what you would find in Kenya, moving people just the same way. But now they are shifting to EVs, and it's a company called FlexEV in Johannesburg. And what they are doing is that they have gotten complete units from China, and they are using this to transition from fossil fuel or petrol fuel or diesel fuel in public transport to EVs. And what this does, and I think it is the same thing with us, Alex, is when it comes to mass movement of people, when they become reliable, they become consistent, you find that even the pricing becomes more predictable. Because what you find with diesel fuel Matatus in Kenya or the petrol fuel ones is that in case there is some kind of instability in fuel markets, this trickles down to the customer. And so you'll find that the fares are doubling and people will choose to not pay the extra and walk some distance because they basically cannot afford it. And so I think when we look at the EVs in public mobility, It is becoming more predictable. You can book ahead of time, and it is reliable. I remember that in Kenya we had a company that was offering this kind of booking for Matatus, whereby you just get to book your Matatu, you know when it is coming, it picks you, and then you get to co-share the costs and the ride. And I think when we have this kind of continuity, and that I know it will be here at 10 a.m., I will not miss my bus, then we can also tell that even the other aspects of this public mobility will change. And this includes cost. This includes reliability. This includes the fact that we can tell that government will have to move where the money is moving.